So guys, it's undeniable that when it comes to EVs, it's difficult or almost impossible to beat the Chinese brands at their own game. But the thing is, a lot of these Chinese brands are still in their infancy. Now think about Korean brands perhaps 20 or 30 years ago. I remember back then, perhaps our younger viewers may not, but I remember back then everybody had a negative impression about Korean cars. Everybody used to say that if you want problems, you buy a Korean car. Now though, they're saying the same thing about Chinese brands. Time will tell how well a lot of these Chinese brands do. But what about the Koreans? The Koreans have evolved. The Koreans now are making cars like this EV9, which I'm in love with, which I'm really not looking forward to returning, to be honest, because it's just such a nice car. And it's sort of blown my mind, because if you follow my reviews, you'll know that I always say that I think when it comes to EVs, they should be small and they should be able to go far and they should be really manageable. Cars like the Volvo EX30, which I just recently drove, I liked that car. And then just 2 days later, I went and picked up this car and I'm back to the drawing board, because it too is a very nice car, but it's just blown my mind in the sense that it is everything that I do not think an EV should be. This is huge. It's a very big car. But because it's so big, it's also, I think Kia had a lot of surface area that they could redesign or explore redesigning the concept of an automobile. And they've done really well. There's no doubt that Kia's designers have done fantastically well in almost all of their cars for the past perhaps 7 or 8 years. The EV9 just takes the cake. Anyway, the EV9 is a brilliant family car. It's a brilliant everyday car. Yes, it's difficult to live with because it's so big. But then in that sense, it works for it as well. But because it's so big, the kids, like my nephew at the back here, is so comfortable that it just makes a lot of sense. And then besides that, I mean, by the way, this is Arav. He's visiting me from Australia. It's his summer break. And I brought him along with me for this video shoot because I figured if Jacinda Ardern, the former Prime Minister of New Zealand, can take a newborn baby to the United Nations General Assembly, then why can't I take my family members for a video shoot, right? Anyway, it's bring your nephew to work day today. So besides that, the EV9 is just a fantastic car. Not only because of the way it looks, but because of what it is. It's just so quiet in here, it's unbelievable. That it's almost Rolls-Royce like I've driven the Wraith quite a bit, and it just sort of reminds me of that, the refinement levels. Of course, this is partly because it's an EV and also partly because of the refinement levels in here that Kia has done a splendid job at. And then the other thing is the design is really, really good. The thing about Chinese car makers is that they love big screens and such that completely distract you. Yes, even with the EV9, there are things over here that are, again, just like the Chinese car makers, hidden behind layers of menu. But you still do get physical controls for simple controls like air conditioning and volume. These are things that should just be an easy stretch away to control, and I give Kia credit for that. This is basic stuff. And then I also like the fact that the screens are so big and they're so uncomplicated that they're just giving me the information that I really want to know in clear, big fonts. None of that gimmicky stuff, none of that, birds flying around graphics that you find in some Chinese cars. So just to be clear, I got nothing against Chinese cars. They are brilliant, they've done a fantastic job, and they've come really far. I'm excited for the future of them, but I know that not a lot of them will make it past the next 10 years. Anyway, that aside, the EV9 is fantastic in a lot of ways as well. I drove this car to Ipoh though, to drop my parents off, and I just got back yesterday. It was a day trip. And I found that it can be a very thirsty car as well. Look at me, I'm still having internal combustion engine terms in my head. Yes, thirsty, because it consumes a lot of power. I found an average consumption of 21.4 kilowatts per hour, and this is just under 100 kilowatt hour battery. That's what powers the EV9. So charging, you find yourself charging quite a bit. And on the topic of charging, I wish that a car of this price range, because 375k for this car is not cheap, guys. So the fact that it only can take 11 kilowatt AC charging, yeah, it's a bit of a bummer. But the thing is, it can also take up to 350 kilowatts of DC charging. Yesterday I needed a quick juice up for this video shoot, so I think I was somewhere between 47 or 50%, and I jumped up to 80% in just 10 minutes. That was fantastic. So I like quick charging such as that. But 22 kilowatt for a car of this price range is a necessity, for sure. So that's a bit of a pity. Then the other thing that I like about this car is just how usable everything is. You get used to stuff. Like this lane keep assisting is an annoying piece of technology. Handy, but annoying. But so to turn it off, I have to go through like 4 layers of menu just to turn it off. Then I figured that I could, program the shortcut button on the steering wheel. And even then, it's still a 2-step process. I have to press this button, press another menu on the screen, and only then I can, then I need to scroll down, and only then I can turn it off. So it's, in terms of these things, yes, it's great and all, but it still can be a little bit too complicated for my liking. However, the refinement of this car and the acceleration, 700 Newton meters of torque, is what works for this car. Seriously, I put this thing in sport mode and I do this and whoa! You okay? So that is the things that you can do with the KIA EV9, any EV for that matter. But the KIA EV9 is quite cool because when you flex your right foot and you floor the accelerator, the electric seats, which have massage function by the way for the driver, they actually grip you tighter. So the car thinks that you're going to go corner carving or something, so it just sort of just grips you by the sides. These bolsters by the side just get tighter, which is very, very cool. I like that. If I'm not mistaken, the first car that I ever experienced that was the first generation Mercedes-Benz CLS 55 AMG. That was fantastic. Anyway, a lot to talk about this car, but as far as EVs go, it's fantastic, but then at the same time, it's so big that you think you can, go mile munching with it. You think you can go, visit to Penang, Johor and such. But the thing about the Malaysian infrastructure is that it's still lagging and hey, that's one thing that I hate about the EV landscape, is our infrastructure is taking its time to sort of catch up. We need more chargers and we need them quick. Chinese brands may dominate the electric vehicle segment, but you can bet that they do not produce cars as cool looking as the Koreans do, particularly Kia. Somehow, Kia has a flair for unusual but catchy designs. I put that down to the company hiring some great designers. Kia's head of global design is a guy by the name of Karim Habib. He's a former BMW designer who also served as the head of design of BMW automobiles from 2012 to 2017, after which he joined Nissan's luxury arm, Infiniti, for 2 years and is now the executive vice president and head of Kia Global Design since 2019. Serving with him is Oliver Sampson, the former member of the Mercedes-Benz Advanced Design team, and Soingmo Lim, who also served within the BMW Munich design department for over a decade. So there is no wonder Kia cars look this good. There is no doubt that the Kia EV9 is a good-looking machine. Its design may be unusual, and it is a very big car as well, just about the size of a Land Rover, so it has quite a presence on the road. The Kia EV9 was introduced to Malaysia back in June of 2024, and there are two variants available, a 6-seater with captain seats, which costs 375,000 ringgit, and then there is this model, the 7-seater, which costs 370,000 ringgit. It is far from cheap, so perhaps that is why we don't see more of these on the road. And we Malaysians are super brand conscious. I can bet that most people would rather buy a BMW or a Mercedes-Benz for that kind of money. As for its powertrain, the EV9 has dual motors that are powered by a 99.8 kilowatt-hour lithium-ion battery that supposedly gives it a WLTP range of 505 kilometers. However, I only saw about 430 kilometers in the real world though. As for power output, the EV9 offers 380 horsepower and 700 Newton meters of torque with a top speed of 200 kilometers per hour. It accelerates to 100 kilometers per hour in 5.3 seconds. As for charging, it can take 11 kilowatt AC charging, which will take about 10 hours and 30 minutes to charge to 100%. And it can also take 350 kilowatts of DC charging, which means it can juice up from 10 to 80% in just 24 minutes. So check out the interior, guys. The interior of the Kia EV9 may not be as futuristic as some of the Chinese car makers, that's for sure. You know, the thing about Chinese car makers is they like to have massive screens and such with all the controls located in the screen. But after having driven many of those type of cars, I have found, actually it's not just me, it's many other car reviewers out there, we have found that having all of the key controls located in that screen can actually be very distracting and very, very dangerous. So much so that it has forced the European NCAP regulators to sort of ensure that car makers actually include buttons, physical buttons and knobs for future cars. Because, you know, having simple controls like air conditioning, volume and controls and such in so many layers of menu requires you taking your eyes off the road, and it doesn't take a genius to point out that that can be dangerous. So in that sense, I appreciate the interior of the Kia EV9 because you still get controls, physical buttons and knobs and such for key controls. Besides that, quality feels good. It feels like a typical Kia in here. So this makes me wonder that are people really going to be paying 375,000 ringgit for this? I think so, because when you look at it from the outside, it actually seems worth it. And when you come inside here and you close this, the emblem I mean, and actually it feels worth it as well. But once you start looking at it as a Kia, then you start thinking, wow, that much money for a Kia? Really? Of course, this might be cheaper in some markets, and Malaysians, unfortunately, we are legendary for our tax structure. So that's why this car is so expensive. But then again, I'm sort of inclined to tell you to actually just go and experience it, because after you experience this, that 375k does not actually seem like a very bad deal, because I like it. So you get a multi-speaker Meridian sound system in here, which is brilliant. You get massage functions for the driver, and then you get thigh support for the driver as well, which I'll show you later. Heated, ventilated, everything is brilliant. Then you get this digital side monitors. None of that, side mirrors are so, I think, 1990, man. So in that sense, Kia has introduced digital side monitors. They look very cool. It takes some getting used to, and I wish they were slightly clearer in that sense. So even with side view mirrors, sometimes it can be difficult to tell distance of the cars that are next to you. It's worse with this because it takes some getting used to. But the one thing that is good about this is that when it's raining, like it does a lot these days, and your window fogs up or something, you can still see the side. So that's the good thing about this. But you just got to ensure that the lens of the camera is always clean. Talking about the camera, you also don't want to make any motorcyclist angry, because if that fella breaks this, I think that costs somewhere between 10 to 15,000 ringgit to replace. I wouldn't be surprised if it costs that much. It's expensive. Now, the other thing about the Kia EV9 that you have to know is that you may find buttons and knobs and controls from cheaper Kias, and I'm not sure how to feel about that. But then again, parts sharing is quite common. So now I'm going to jump behind, but before I do that, I would just like to point something out, because as brilliant as the seats are, I just don't like this headrest, because it sort of reminds me of the office chair that I used in my former office space. So this sort of very cheap and very unbecoming of a car that costs 375k. But then again, if you don't have a lot of hair like me and you tend to sweat, you're not going to create any stains on your headrest. So that's a good thing. That's probably the only good thing about this. But for me, kind of looks cheap. Let me go back. But before jumping behind, I'd just like to show this, the thigh support that I was mentioning about earlier. See how so this is like a, one of those Ottoman chairs that you have at home. And this works rather nicely because on long distance drives, it gives you that much needed thigh support as well, just making it a lot more comfortable on the road. So yesterday on the way back from Ipoh, I had this and I had the massage function turned on, and it was just so nice. I mean, after an hour of driving this car in the normal way, having this thigh support and turning on the massage function just makes it feel like you can continue driving this car. I mean, even into Thailand, and with Thailand's EV infrastructure, there's probably a better place to drive the EV9 than here in Malaysia. Now we go back. So as you can see, the back seats of the Kia EV9 are fantastic. This is the 7-seater version. There's a 6-seater version with captain chairs. Even that is very cool. In fact, I think if you don't really need a lot of space, the 6-seater version is probably the model to go for. But this is super, super nice. It's very spacious, it's very comfortable, it's brilliant if you have kids. It's also nice to be driven in. So if you're looking for a car to be driven in on a day-to-day basis, then I think you don't really need to go for cars. I want to say BMW 7 Series, Mercedes S-Class, BMW iX. You don't really need to go for cars like that, because this is comfortable enough, it's spacious enough, it has all the tech and features that you need in a car. Of course, it does not have the monitors that you get at the back of the seats and such, but how many of you actually use that? I know I had a car that had monitors at the back as well. Never touched it in the 8 years that I had that car. So in that sense, the Kia EV9 is a great car to be driven in as well, simply because it has a lot of presence on the road. It's an imposing car, and when you pull up in this, people look, and that's what a lot of Malaysians like, right? We like to show off, we like to show off our money, we like to show that we are successful and such, and that's what the Kia EV9 does really well, simply because of how good looking the car is. So in that sense, the back seats are fantastic, and even as a 7-seater, this is brilliant. The back seats are fantastic. For the third row seats are fantastic for kids up to 8 years old. My nephew and my son actually loved spending time in the back seat, and in that sense, that makes the Kia EV9 a very versatile car. For one, you can be driven in it, and another aspect is even it's perfect for the family. The other thing that I like about the second row seats of the Kia EV9 is that they are heated and ventilated as well. So on a hot Malaysian day, there's nothing better than having cool air blown to your back. This is one of my favorite things about the second row of the Kia EV9 as well. Now we talk about the best part about the Kia EV9, the design of the car. As Hyrail, who's holding this camera, just said, it looks badass. It's just so unusual that it's actually good looking. And this is a design that only an EV can pull off because there's no engine to cool, so we don't need a grille. And because of that, it's just so imposing on the road. It's just a very good looking car from that sense. These vertical headlights though look like they were inspired by the Cadillac Escalade, and that's not a bad thing because it sort of suits the overall design character of the car. And if you're wondering what's underneath here, let me just open it and show you. So there you go, a proper usable frunk. I mean, it's not as big as those that you'll find in the Tesla and such, but in this is usable space. I mean, you can probably put about 4 to 5 medium-sized durians in here, so you don't actually stink up the cabin. So in that sense, it's usable space, as I've said. So yeah, makes it very easy to live with, the Kia EV9. So from the side over here, the Kia EV9 has very Land Rover Defender-ish sort of silhouette. Now, if you don't think about that, I like the 21-inch wheels, I like the boxy wheel arches over here, this digital side camera sort of just jives in the overall design language of the car. But what is missing from here is just sort of a side step. But that's okay because it's not a very tall car like a Range Rover or any cars of that sort. So stepping in and out is actually quite easy. And then I just love this color as well, this turquoise-ish color with this, tinted black glass, just sort of makes the car look very VIP. And then when you come over here, of course, I think the Kia EV9 sort of, the best angle to the car is the front 3/4 of the car, because the back over here just sort of looks very regular. It's too simplistic, I think, but at the same time it looks quite elegant as well. Now, I particularly like the fact that Kia didn't bother putting any fake exhaust vents over there, so I'm quite grateful for that. And over here, even with the third row seats in place, you sort of get a very usable space over here. Good enough for your laptops, good enough for your cables, your charging cables and such. But accessibility is fantastic because if you need more space, all you got to do is press this button and voila, you get more space. And you don't only get more space, you get a lot of space for that matter. And then over here you even get a 3-pin plug, because the Kia EV9 also is capable of it has a vehicle to load functionality. So in that sense, it's actually very usable out on the field as well. So if you have an active lifestyle, you like to take your kids out camping and such, the EV9 is a good partner in that sense. Now you must be wondering what's underneath here. And this is just enough space for your tonneau cover. So yes, you do get a tonneau cover as well. So if you don't need the third row of seats, you have a tonneau cover to just sort of hide all your stuff so that nobody else can see it. So the Kia EV9 has completely taken my breath away. In fact, I think that at 375,000 ringgit, this is probably a better buy than the BMW iX. You know that you have the iX3, the iX2s, and they sit, especially the iX3, they sit in sort of the same price range as well. So rather than an iX3 particularly, I think this is probably a better buy simply because of the amount of space and the design that you get actually. So if you're thinking about any cars of that price range, even like a Mercedes EQC, EQB, EQA, those are just nonsense in the face of the Kia EV9. Because, I mean, look at it. And but it's not all a bed of roses. There are a couple of things that I really, well, wish could be better, because at 375,000 ringgit, you don't get a compartment to keep your sunglasses. But again, I'm probably picking at bones over here. But I have multiple sunglasses, and I do like to wear my sunglasses when I'm driving. So a sunglass compartment would be nice. Besides that, I've also said that there's no 22 kilowatt AC charging, which is a bit of a bummer if you ask me. There should be 22 kilowatts AC charging, so maybe a update to the Kia EV9 is necessary at this point. I also found that the adaptive cruise control of the EV9 is not as smooth. So driving from KL to Ipoh just 2 days ago, I had the adaptive cruise control turned on, and it just sort of used to brake for no reason whatsoever. That was at night, so maybe the system was confused and such. And the other thing that I found to be rather odd are the adaptive headlights. Now, you turn on the automatic adaptive headlamps, and it sort of works to like illuminate dark areas on the road and such. But it just used to illuminate and turn off, illuminate and turn off. So perhaps this too needs to be looked into in a future update. And then, as I've already said earlier in this video, that it consumes quite a bit of power. This is a car that weighs in at over 2.6 tons. It's big and heavy, and it consumes a lot of power. So perhaps another model with a bigger battery and something would be better, but a bigger battery will probably take longer to charge lah. So chicken and egg situation over there. However, it's not all doom and gloom. I love the design. I'm completely smitten by this car, I would say. I love the size of it. I love the spaciousness that it provides. It's such an easy car to live with on a day-to-day basis, particularly if your day-to-day routine involves dropping your kids off to school, going to the office, picking them up, going to tuition and such. Then the Kia EV9 is perhaps a perfect daily partner. A driver would make it probably a lot more convenient, because parking a car of this size is not easy. So having a driver to wait for you while you do your stuff is probably nice, a nice thing to have as well. It's a nice car to be driven in, particularly because the refinement levels in here is something just wow. I've never experienced a Kia like this. So should you spend 375,000 ringgit on a Kia EV9? If you're already contemplating it, I would say yes, definitely go for it, because this is a car that looks like this. It's a brilliant looking car. It has such a presence on the road. However, do expect to lose some money, because the Kia brand in the after sales, in the second-hand car market, you probably end up losing quite a bit of money. And before I actually shot this video, I did some research online. There are no second-hand Kia EV9s available. So maybe that's something that you do not have to worry about. Anyway, you're buying a car for yourself, for the moment, for perhaps the next 1 or 2 years. Why do you worry about what the future may hold? Worry about that later. Buy a Kia EV9. It looks like this. It looks fantastic, and it offers you a brilliant driving experience. Thank you for watching, guys. Do consider subscribing.